Hey, everybody. So, in this episode, I'm going to talk about what rare earth minerals are used in, who produces them, a little bit about who consumes them, and we can go into more depth about how the Chinese possible restriction on rare earth minerals may affect us in the future. So, if you want to learn a little bit, please take a listen. All right, guys. So, with more news and things coming out about the rare earth situation, the rare earth minerals with China and the trade war, I decided I wanted to do a little bit of digging and look into the what are the rare earth minerals and how exactly, like, what are they used in? I mean, I know they're used in batteries, but that's about it, right? So I found this website, geology.com. Looks pretty solid. So there's an article here by Robert M. King, PhD, and it says rare earth minerals and their uses. So I kind of gone through this here, and basically kind of skimming around, we see that rare earth minerals are metals and alloys rare earth metals and alloys that contain them are used in many devices that people use every day. So we're going to talk about real quick what they're used in. They're used in computer memory, so that's going to be, like your hard drives, flash drives, I guess, things like that. DVDs, rechargeable batteries, cell phones, catalytic converters, magnets, fluorescent lighting, and then it says, and much, much more. Then off to the side, there's a chart. And it says that 55% of the rare earth minerals elements are used for catalysts, 15% are used for ceramics and glass, 10% for metallurgy, 5% for polishing, and then 15% other. So we see here, it shows this chart, the one I just talked about. It says the use of, so many vehicles use rare earth catalysts in their exhaust systems for pollution control. So I guess that's the catalytic converter. A large number of alloys are made more durable by the addition of rare earth metals. For example, glass, granite, marble, gemstones are often polished with cerium oxide powder. Many motors and generators contain magnets made with rare earth elements. Phosphors used in digital displays, monitors, and televisions are created with rare earth oxides. Most computer, cell phone, and electric vehicle batteries are made with rare earth minerals. So that's a lot of our modern world, right? A lot of modern conveniences. So your cell phone, your TV screen, your computer screen, the memory in your computer, the catalytic converters on your car. So, we're all driving cars, we're all using cell phones, and we're making more and more cell phones. It's used for the glass in those parts as well. So within this article, it says during the past 20 years, there has been an explosion in demand for many items that require rare earth minerals. 20 years ago, there were very few cell phones in use, but the number has risen to over 7 billion in use today. The use of rare earth elements in computers has grown almost as fast as cell phones. So it's obvious here the play, right? If China wants to exact a bit of a squeeze on the United States, then that's the point of this here, is restrict the rare earth minerals that we use in everyday products. I think it's important to know this information because I heard about this. It's funny enough, I heard about this in high school. Sure enough, it was funny. As I'm rereading this, I was in high school in 2010 is when I graduated. And as I'm reading this article, it talked about in 2010, some stuff went down where they tried to restrict the supply. So this has been talked about for a while, but I think there's a lot of, I think most people just don't know, including myself, what are these minerals used for? All I knew really is that they were used in batteries. Okay? So, let's see here. It says critical defense uses. Rare earth elements play an essential role in our national defense. The military uses night vision goggles, precision-guided weapons, communications equipment, GPS equipment, batteries, and other defense electronics. These give the United States military an enormous advantage. Rare earth metals are key ingredients for making the very hard alloys used in armored vehicles and projectiles that shatter upon impact. Substitutes can be used for rare earth minerals in some defense applications. However, those substitutes are usually not as effective, and that diminishes military superiority. Several uses of rare earth minerals are summarized, and it gives me a table. So, and it goes into a bit of the history of it, how the demand went up drastically when the color TV came about. Here's a interesting part here. So now we're getting more into the production. Okay, so it says China's apex of production dominance. The Chinese dominance may have peaked in 2010 when they controlled about 95% of the world's rare earth production, and prices for many rare earth oxides had risen over 500% in just a few years. That was an awakening for rare earth consumers and miners throughout the world. Mining companies in the U.S., Australia, Canada, and other countries began to re-evaluate old rare earth prospects and explore for new ones. High prices also caused manufacturers to do three things: seek ways to reduce the amount of rare earth elements needed for their products, seek alternative metals used to replace the rare earth minerals, and develop alternative products that do not require rare earth minerals. So ever since China's peak of using their rare earth minerals, and the prices went up substantially back in 2010, we can see that manufacturers, I guess, began to try to decrease their use of rare earths in each individual product that required them, look for alternatives, and the third is, just develop new products that don't even require rare earth minerals. So it says later on, it talks about how the substitutes are not always as good, but it also talked about how even though rare earth minerals are being used less in each product, the amount of products that use them have drastically increased, right? So like maybe each cell phone uses less rare earth elements than it did in the past, but now we've got a lot more cell phones, so we're still using more rare earth minerals. Chinese companies have been, so rare earth production outside of China. We see that mines in Australia began producing rare earth oxides in 2011. In 2012 and 2013, they were supplying about 2 to 3% of the world production. And the United States produced about 4% of the world's rare earth minerals in 2013. So the United States used to be the major producer up until the 90s is when the Chinese started taking control. And so since then, the Chinese have had the lion's share, and they had a peak control of about 95%, and I think it's lower now. I think I read that it was around like 70%. It continues to say, although China is the world leader in rare earth production, they only control about 36% of the world's reserves. This provides an opportunity for other countries to become important producers now that China is not selling rare earth minerals below the cost of production. So basically, what China did was when they first were manufacturing rare earth minerals, they did something called dumping, or at least I believe this is what they're alluding to. Dumping is when a product is subsidized by a government or another entity that allows the company that's providing the product to sell it at below cost. So if it costs $1 to completely mine a usable rare earth mineral, then the government might be subsidizing the company, so that way even though it costs $1 for every ounce or every pound, whatever it is, that now the cost or the price is even lower than the cost of production. So let's see here. As it continues, it says in 2010, China significantly restricted their rare earth exports. That was done to ensure the supply of rare earths for domestic manufacturing and quote-unquote environmental reasons. Sure. The shift by China triggered panic buying, and some rare earth prices shot up exponentially. In addition, Japan, the U.S., and the EU complained to the World Trade Organization, whatever. Complain ain't going to do shit. But essentially, these are very important, very, very, very important minerals in many aspects. But I just wanted to provide this this information so that way people are a little bit more informed. Now you kind of get an idea of who's producing them. For example, right now the top producers are Australia, China, and it looks like Russia and India. So you get a bit of an idea that China produces most of the world's rare earth minerals. They also are the world's highest consumer. It says, in addition to being the world's largest producer, China is also a dominant consumer. They use it for all, their manufacturing that they use for everything. So what do we see here? I'm going to pause, do an ad read, and we're going to come back. So hold on. Hey, everybody. Do you want to record your own podcast like me? Well, Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. That's right, mofos. It's easy. Check it out. So now let's look at what's actually going on with the rare earth mineral situation. So China is not explicitly said that they're going to restrict the supply of rare earth minerals yet. But they have, according to some of the state-run newspapers, like the People's Daily, I believe it was, that they are considering it. Now, the United States gets most of our, I think it was like 80%, according to an article I read from Reuters, 80% of our rare earths from China. So, obviously, if they restrict supply, that will increase the price drastically. However, it looks like they're already set to impose an increase in their own, it said an import for, they're going to add a tariff to our ability to import it. So I guess the government is just charging extra for us to get it into the United States. So that looks like it's already set to happen June 1st, but a drastically cutting back the supply, which I think has spooked the markets a little bit, that has yet to be seen. And it looks like Beijing might be using their state-run newspaper as kind of a soft form of kind of seeing how this goes. That way, when they get into negotiations with Trump, the government hasn't officially said or done anything, but it's just the newspapers talking about it. But we all kind of know what's going on with the newspapers there. So basically, the newspapers are used as a mouthpiece for the party. Now, what are some of the implications of this? I guess it's pretty straightforward. It appears that if they restrict the rare earth mineral supply enough and the prices go up high enough, that could increase the price of production of a number of goods. Like I already read off earlier, it could increase the price of batteries, of polish for glass, of polish for granite, of things that are used for catalytic converters in cars. And so there's a lot of products that use the rare earth minerals and that we get from China. So obviously the deal there would be, if they restricted the supply enough and it gets expensive enough, then one, it would increase the price of those goods. So, we could see a price of many goods go up across the board, TV screens, laptop screens, memory, hard drives, things like that could all go up in price. And they could just simply disrupt the supply chain itself. So, there's that. They could just, if they restrict the supply enough and people just can't get their hands on it, then obviously production just stops, right? What's interesting to me is that China isn't directly threatening this via government. This also makes me think that we probably have a slight advantage in the fact that we're consuming so much. So for anyone who is not acquainted with the Trump idea, the Trump policy is the part of the Trump strategy with the trade war, at least from what I understand, and I could be wrong, is that he's attacking the fact that we buy so much of their products, right? It's kind of like it's the idea that we basically help keep China running, keep China in business. We buy so much of their products, we buy so many of their exports that if we, as much as it hurts that they are producing everything, right? They're producing a lot of the things that we need. At the same time, if we cut off the supply of money going to them, then that really, really hurts their employment situation. And in China, employment is extremely important, as it is anywhere else in the world. But it's extremely important in China because their population is so damn big. And also, people have to have faith in the party. They have to have faith in the government. So China's been through a long and rocky history. The last 100, 150 years have been really, really crazy for them. And so it's very important for the government of China to maintain an authoritative stance. It's very important for them to maintain trust with the people. So if the people don't have enough jobs and they can't feed their families, people are going to lose faith in the government. And if you have 1.3 billion people, 1.4 billion people in your country, it's extremely important that people look up to the government as the authority, as the rule-making body. Otherwise, you could have riots that get way out of control. I mean, that's one reason why we see such an invasive, in my opinion, that's why we see so many invasive moves in China where the government has CCTV cameras set up all over the place. And one reason is, if you've got that many people, it was way too easy for things to get out of control, right? And so they don't want that to happen. So back to what I'm referring to is, China could be feigning the rare earth mineral increase because if they do, it could also negatively impact their employment in the country. So if the United States, 80% of our imports of rare earth minerals are coming from China, I mean, we probably represent the United States, I wish I had the figures, but I assume we represent a large amount of some of their mining companies' sales. And so you don't want to, that old saying, like what, you don't want to chop off your nose to spite your face, right? You don't want to destroy your sales and destroy your employment prospects in your country to show the U.S. who's boss, right? Especially if you're not boss. So Trump is leveraging the fact that we are heavily reliant on them in such a heavy way. We're such a disproportionately large customer for them that they are going to probably toe the line. That's the game he's playing. Now, this could be the fact in the rare earth mineral situation. If China decides to cut the supply, which they could do, it would be probably pretty bad for the United States. That being said, we could go to other sources, right? We could go to Australia. We could go to other parts of that Southeast Asia where the minerals are being produced. Now, we can also produce them in our own country. They're just more expensive. So we could do that. And the price would increase, and it would take probably a few years for everything to adjust out, the supply and the demand of the situation. And if we're doing it, we have to get plants online. That's going to take time. But I am not convinced that China would necessarily jump to this move. One, because, just the fact that the government hasn't come out and made the stance, that it's being run through the newspapers, makes me think that they're trying to see how this plays, especially ahead of negotiations with Trump. They're trying to throw this out in the water. And two, so one, it doesn't seem that serious, but it's serious. Just not maybe that serious, whatever you take that for. Then the other part of the equation is that if they do decide to cut the supply, we're the biggest customer. If we were to permanently find another solution, it would be devastating. And even if it wasn't a permanent situation, even in the short run, China cutting off their sales to their biggest customer could be a horrible, horrible situation for them. So I'm not convinced this move's going to happen, but at least now you have a better idea, hopefully, of the situation. So thank you for listening, and I'm going to end it there.